Okay, chapter four. Chapter four is on preventing fraud, and you can never really prevent fraud, but you can do some things to try to um, prevent it as much as possible. Okay. Uh, the Committee on Sponsoring Organizations. I know this seems like it's a not almost like a made up group, but it's actually a very important one. It's a number of groups got together, and their whole thing is to look at internal controls. And one of those things is, of course, is trying to um, mitigate fraud. Try to reduce fraud as much as you can. Okay, so it includes the following: the control environment, which we've talked about before. Risk assessment. So you're going to look at risks, both the dollar amount and probability. For example, maybe you have a dollar amount of $5,000 and a probability of, say, so the likely loss from this fraud on average is going to be what, $3,000. So you're always looking at the probability of something, and the more the lower the probability, the less risk you're going to be at. Set of control activities, which we're going to spend some time on today. Information communication systems, including the accounting system. And the process of monitoring compliance with the controls. In other words, you put these controls in, how do you know that they're being actually done? You can't just put the controls in and just assume they're working and so forth. There's going to be a monitoring of those controls. Okay, and just so you know, those of you that are interested in taking the CPA exam, the Committee on Sponsoring Organizations internal control framework is heavily tested. It's big and it's getting bigger. Okay, so set of control activities. Five types of control activities. Three of them are preventative, and two of them are detective. Preventative means they prevent bad things from happening, fraud from happening. And detective means that they detect it after the fact. Damn. Okay, so preventative controls prevent fraud, detective controls detect it. So this one keeps it from happening. This one down here is going to detect it if it does happen. Okay, segregation of duty. We've talked about this one. I know we have. You remember it by car? So these are the three segregation of duties. You remember it by car, CAR. Process of authorizations that only authorized transactions happen. So if they aren't authorized, that they don't happen, and especially in computerized systems, that this is one of the really good ones for computerized systems, because they a lot of times cannot be overridden. And safeguards, locks, keys, safes, fences, you get the idea. If you keep people out of those areas, it's impossible for them to do something. For instance, you may have expensive inventory, like jewelry, maybe under lock and key. That only a few people have those locks and keys, and that it keeps people from taking those things physically. They can't get to them. Okay, so these other two are for detecting fraud. So these keep the fraud from happening. Down here, these two activities are after the fact detected. So things like job rotations, mandatory vacations, audits, bank reconciliations, and so on. So these are things that are done after the fact that might detect the fraud. System of documents and records that provide an audit trail. That can be followed to check the suspicious activity. So a lot of times, if there's a good audit trail, one of the interesting things is, like for computers, they thought that the audit trail would be compromised, but what they really find is that computerization really strengthened the audit trail. I was very concerned when computers first started kind of coming into vogue that that we're going to lose the audit trail. The fact of the matter is that nowadays with computers, a lot of the time, even somewhat mundane tasks are tracked to such extent that they know who did it, when they did it, down to the 100th of a second. Everything is recorded. Broad triangle, we've already talked about this one, but he's popping up again and again. There has to be some kind of a need. Opportunity, this is what we're trying to address here. Take away some of the opportunity, this prevention, take away the opportunity. And rationalization, some way that they can come to terms with what they've done, and that in some way it's okay. We talked about that before. Okay. One of the things that is kind of criticized about the way that we go about trying to prevent fraud is, or mitigate the fraud, is to we focus on this opportunity, really good systems, keep people away from all that. More and more, though, this perceived need is one that the idea is, well, it takes all three of these. So if you can just take out one of them, you may very well prevent the fraud. And one of the things is an employee assistance program. So these are become more and more popular. First of all, just for the well-being of your employees. It reduces all kinds of stuff, sick days and all that kind of stuff. But that you can help them with things like substance abuse, gambling, money management. And all these things, you can have counselors and so forth, they can help them with these. And notice that, you have to have all three for the fraud triangle. So if you can take out one of those, you prevent it. And it doesn't necessarily have to be just opportunity, which is what we always focused on in the past. Okay, reduction of the fraud opportunities. You can't prevent it, but there are some things that you can do to keep it from, to reduce it. Okay. Good internal controls, duh. Number two, discourage collusion. And collusion is when two or more people get together. Is that? When people collude to override the segregation of duties is usually what we come up with for this one. It's usually two people that are, there's a segregation of duties. If you get anyone in this group that get together, they can override the segregation of duties. And that's usually what you're looking about for people when they collude. Someone steals the inventory and somebody else, in record keeping, say in accounting, covers for it. Oops. Only one. For one thing, it has too many M's in it. So employee one steals cash. They have access to cash. Employee two in the accounting department covers for it. And it's really hard when you have collusion. It can't be with employee one. Hold on, let me change it. Employee two. So this would be a collusion. So someone in Treasury Department steals the cash. They're working with somebody in the accounting department that covers for the theft. And that becomes really difficult to find. Okay. Okay, monitoring employees preventing a hotline. The hotline should be not in the normal line of fire. You don't say tell your supervisor. Your supervisor might be the one doing the fraud. So this is outside the normal. One of the things they always come up with is, why didn't you say anything? You knew what the fraud, why didn't you say anything about it? Well, my manager was the one doing it. So they want it to be outside the normal, I'll say the normal management. I'm sorry, change that. I'll say the normal management organization. So if their manager is doing a fraud, you don't want them reporting that to their manager. It's not going to do any good. So it has to be something outside the normal management organization that it goes to. Creating an expectation of punishment. Okay, the idea that if someone gets caught, that someone's going to do something about it. What you end up with if you don't have this expectation of punishment in some way, people aren't stupid. People will say, okay, well, it looks like you get one shot, and you know, if you get one shot, you can have a go at fraud, and nothing's going to happen, and there'd be a precedent set. So if action is taken, for instance, somebody is fired for it, then people know, okay, don't do it, or else there is, you know, I'll get fired or whatever it is, or I'll get prosecuted. Now, the president can go the other way too, though. If you don't punish the employee that's committed the fraud, all of a sudden you're going to have a lot more fraud. So, okay, that's it for chapter 4.